A few days ago, actually last week on Twitter, I had posted up a tweet talking about basically reflecting on this young woman by the name of Kierra Coles and how it's been over 4 years since, well, almost going on 4 years. It's been over three. It'll be 4 years at towards the end of the year since she just kind of vanished into thin air. Like she just went missing and no one really heard from her again. And to this day, as far as I know, the case is still open. It might have gone cold, but they haven't really had any updates and reports concerning her. But for some reason, she just kind of happened to pop up into my head because for those of you who have been following my channel since 2018 at least, which is when I started talking about the story, because this is when the story first happened. I said this will be one of those stories that I would definitely keep my eye on, sort of like with Nia Wilson, Kawan Charles, and a few others. Because, with me doing so many stories, it's kind of hard for me to keep up with every single story. But it's some of them that just kind of stick out to me that I say I want to continue to focus on and really keep my eye on just to see if there's an outcome to it, which basically means I'm heavily invested into it. But for those of you who don't know who Kierra Coles is, she was a young woman out of Chicago. She worked for the post office and she was pregnant. I forgot how many months pregnant she was. I believe I don't think she was that I don't think she had that long to go before actually giving birth. I think she was probably maybe 7 months at the max. So she was pretty far along in her pregnancy, and she worked for the post office out of Chicago. And then one day she just left to go to work, and she never made it to work, and she never made it home. So it's like she just vanished and nobody knows what happened to her. Now, of course, when it comes to situations such as these, the first person they look to as maybe a primary suspect is who she was involved with, her boyfriend, who I believe is the father of her and the child. But they ruled him out as a suspect. They basically said they had nothing to pinpoint on him to say that he was the one that was involved with her disappearance. So then they went back to square one, which practically was almost like square zero. And they pretty much got stuck. They literally searched high and low trying to find this young woman, and they could never find her. And I think what made this scary is the fact that she was pregnant. So if she is alive, and that's a very big if, that means that her child will be turning 4 this year. That's crazy when you think about it. And it's sad too, because let's just hypothetically say that she's alive wherever she may be, and her child is alive. That means that her family missed out on some memories that they could have had with their grandson or their nephew, or in the case of the boyfriend, his son. So it's kind of scary and it's sad when you think about it. But I think when it comes to situations like these, you always want to hold out hope. But a lot of the times when it comes to something like this, I think you almost have to put something in your mind and saying that she's most likely gone, if you get my drift. You don't want to think that, but it's like they have no leads. It's very strange how it happened. And the crazy part about it is, I believe that they had the last footage they had of her was on some surveillance footage, like, because you know how they have the cameras up like on a lot of street areas in Chicago. But they said once she walks off that camera, they don't see her again. And so they don't know if she was kidnapped or whatever the case may be. 9 times out of 10, she probably could have been kidnapped. I would not be surprised if somebody kidnapped her and took her child, like cut her open and took her child. That I don't want to think that, but that's not far-fetched. And look at her. This is a picture of her before, I would say before she was pregnant, because you can tell like this is a pretty long scale picture of her. She doesn't have a bump, so you could tell that this was before she was pregnant. She's a very, very pretty young woman. So and it's scary when you think about it. But one thing that really got me to this story, that really made me get even more invested into the story, is when I was hearing about how her dad would park outside of her apartment complex every single day in hopes that he would see his daughter walk home. And he said he had parked out there. He had missed out going to work. I don't know. I think he said he may have lost his job just sitting outside of the apartment with where his daughter lived, hoping that she would walk home. And he did that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And never, ever did he see her walk home. That was when I read that, I'm not even going to lie. When I read that part, I almost burst into tears because I said, I know that's got to be so heartbreaking to have to park outside of your daughter's complex who's pregnant with your grandchild and hope that you can see her walking home or coming home, and then have to go day after day after day and not see her. Especially when you're probably used to having communications with her every day. That's another thing. When you are a parent and you have children that you're used to communicating with every day, and the day goes by and you don't hear from them, you get worried. I never forget when I was in college, because I went to school in another state, 8 hours away from home. And, that was my first time really getting away from home and really experiencing, I guess you could say, true freedom, I guess you could say. And I was having so much fun that I did not even think to call home and call my parents and tell them how I was doing, because they were so used to seeing me every day, hearing me every day, or hearing from me all the time, that for 1 week, because it was freshman orientation, they did not hear from me for a whole week. And mind you, I'm 8.5 hours away. It's not like I'm 8 minutes away or an hour away. I'm 8.5 hours away. That's a whole work day and some change. And I remember I had went back to the dorm where I was at, and the people at the front was asking me, they said, "Are you so-and-so?" I said, "Yes." They was like, "Please call your parents, because they done called up here so many times asking where you were at." Because see, the thing is, I was having so much fun that I didn't even think to get in contact with them. So I went straight down, like after they called me, I went back to my room and got on the phone and I called them. And I literally probably sat on the phone with them for over an hour. And mainly because I just had to listen to them almost practically cuss me out. Not because they were so much mad that it was a little bit of them being mad that I didn't contact them, but because it's almost like I completely neglected. They just said, "We just wanted to check to see that you were good. You didn't have to stay on the phone with us the whole time, but when we didn't hear from you, we were worried. It's like because we called you and you never answered or anything like that." And that's partially my fault. I think it's because I was like, I probably was busy doing other things and I couldn't answer them, but I could have had the decency to at least text them back. But I didn't even do that. My dad was telling me how my mother was on the other end crying, thinking something bad had happened to me. Like it was that deep. And I'm not even over exaggerating this story that I'm telling you right now. And it was at that moment that I knew that I had parents that care, because some parents wouldn't. And from that point forward, I stayed in constant contact with them. I probably just texted maybe like once or twice a day, just saying, "Hey, how you doing? I'm doing good," so on and so forth. "Have a good day, good night," so forth, and just continue on with my day. And that was it. But I think I needed that wake up call. But the reason why I tell that story is because this reminds me so much of her dad going out and just parking in front of her complex, seeing if she was going to walk home. That just means right there that it sounds to me like they had a good relationship, a good father-daughter relationship with each other. And for all we know, this could have been his first grandchild. I don't know how many siblings she had, or if she even had any siblings. So it's scary, and it's unfortunate. And that's, like I said, one of the reasons why I stayed invested with this story. Now, like I said, this is year 4. This is going on 4 years later. And we still don't know where she is. Based on some things that I've been looking at, I think last year she would have turned 29. I think she would have turned 29 last year. 29 or 30. Because I'm looking at another article and it says, Kierra Coles' disappearance family celebrates 29th birthday. And it says Chicago postal worker Kierra Coles missing for 3 years. So if you're doing 2018 to 2021. So last year, yeah, she would have been turning 29. So this year she would be turning 30, which means her son or her child will be turning 4. It's just very, it's very sad. It's very unfortunate about her going missing, and there's no leads. Like, it's like I said, it's like she vanished into thin air. It's like someone snapped their finger and she just disappeared like the Thanos snap, and she just faded into obscurity. Like, no one knows where she is, and like there's no like possibilities, nothing. But I really feel like I feel really bad for her family, especially her father. Like I said, hearing him and saying what he was saying is what made me get invested with this story. But and then again, of course, there's always stories like when it comes to black people go missing that mainstream media doesn't stay on top of it that much. Now, of course, when it came to like people like Natalie Holloway, they stayed searching for her for an entire summer until they finally found her. I think they found her. They at least found the person who was responsible for her death. But you know how it is when it comes to us. And we just got to like stay on top of these type of stories. It's probably even some people in Chicago that don't even know about this story. Or they probably heard about it a little bit and then it kind of faded off and they didn't hear about it again. But like I told you, she never faded from my memory. She never faded from my mind. And keep in mind, I don't know her personally. I never met her. I don't know anyone who knows her. I don't know her family or anything like that. One thing I like about doing these videos, though, is that you never know who it may reach. I've had people who are family members of other people who have reached out to me and said, thank you for bringing more light to this story. Like when I used to have my email, people used to email me and say, thank you for bringing light to this story. Even if there's some things I may have gotten wrong and they'll email me and say, look, you got this wrong. Can you please take it down? I wouldn't even argue with it. I would just do it. But this is one of the reasons why the voices of the new black media are definitely needed. Because, of course, we talk about the stuff we talk about on here. But this is a serious discussion that I'm having right now. I'm not reading anything. And I actually looked, typed her name into Google. The last article that was posted was back in October of this year, but it wasn't an update of saying, we found her or anything like that. It's just an update saying that she's still missing. And I think that the family may have, and I could be speaking out of turn, and I hope that I'm not, but I think the family and even her friends and associates might have come to terms with what might have happened to her. But it's the fact of they just want some closure. And the closure is them finding her, most likely her remains. That's really what I think they want to happen, is knowing where she's at. That way they can say, okay, we've come to terms that she's gone. We have found her remains. Now we are going to work through the grieving process and the mourning process, and then slowly but surely come to grips that she's no longer here. But as long as it's, she's still missing, then it's like it's a wound that's still open and there's no closure. And when a wound stays open like that, it becomes infectious. So I know that's just eating them up inside, knowing they do not have any clue where their loved one is at, whether she's alive or deceased. Like, that has to rattle your brain, especially since she's been missing since 2018. She's been missing for going on 4 years, and she was pregnant. I think that's the other part that is creepy about it too, because she was with child. She was pregnant. So that's two people that are essentially missing. And you want to know what the scariest part about it is? And I hate that I even have to say this, and I kind of briefly mention it, is that what if they, like, hypothetically saying they found her, but they didn't find a fetus, which means somebody killed her and took the child. And that, I can only imagine how that will make them feel even more like, wow, you found your daughter that's been gone for this long, but you didn't find the child that she was pregnant with, which means someone out there has her child. I wouldn't be surprised if they took it a step further and there were organs missing as well. Think about it. She's young. She was pregnant. She appeared to be very healthy. I wouldn't be surprised. That stuff goes on in this society that we live in. I hate to put it out there like that, but I'm covering all the bases of what they might find or might not find if they do indeed find her. But the family says they're not giving up. But I just wanted to come on here and bring this story to y'all just in case people were not familiar with who Kierra Coles was. Give y'all a little bit of a backstory about who she was, when she went missing, and everything else that I could possibly draw from memory for me following this case, at least when they were giving updates. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end the video on that note. Y'all let me know what you think down in the comments.